All right, guys, welcome to the People First podcast. Long time since we've done a podcast. I think we've had several months off, and I am super excited and super happy to end that drought with my guest today, Kirstene Ciappara. Did I get that right?
You did.
Didn't butcher it. Beautiful. Now, why I wanted to bring, I call her KC. It's just easy, right? We just keep it short and simple. The reason I wanted to bring Casey on, I've been watching her as a member here for a while at HF, and I was intrigued by a few things you were doing and saying. You know, you talk about purpose a lot, you talk about your passions a lot. There's a lot of trigger words that you use around in your general language that got me interested into what it is that you were doing and where you were headed. And then this thing popped up, this 5:30 a.m. group popped up. And I was like, wow, this is something that I'm super interested in. Obviously, it's a time frame I can't really make, but I'm definitely interested in getting up early, getting a jump on the day, and working on your passions and purpose. And then to find out that you were behind it made all this sense just sort of collect for me. I joined all the dots together. Got chatting to KC, started to think she would be a perfect guest for the People First podcast. And not only because of the things that she's doing outside of this stuff, like the 530 project and your other projects that you'll talk about later, but because of the person that you are, because of where you are, because of things that you've done. And before I ruin the entire podcast talking for far too long about things I'm not 100% sure about in your life, I want you to do me a favor and introduce yourself so that the people get to know you and that you can do the best job of selling who you are and what you're about. So welcome.
Thank you.
Up to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you today. I guess I don't really have a simple answer to who am I? I mean, who does really? But I guess I wear a couple of different hats. So if I put on my teacher hat, I am a secondary teacher teaching a subject called life design, which is super cool. I also have my own online business within the personal branding space. And as you mentioned, I've just started the 5:30 a.m. club in Penrith, which is part of a wider movement of 5:30 clubs across Australia. And there isn't any out in the west, quite a few out near the beaches. I just really loved the concept of it. And as soon as I went and experienced one in Bondi, I was like, yep, got to bring this to Penrith. So wear a couple of different hats, but they're my main three.
So what is it that got you interested in teaching, and how old are you now?
I'm 25.
25, yep. How long have you been teaching for?
I graduated uni middle of 2018, so almost 3 years now. Awesome. I think growing up, I always had the desire to teach. I actually remember forcing my younger brother and my younger cousin out to my little classes outside. We used to have a whiteboard and used to make them pretend and do my classes and all of that. And I think from a young age, it was always quite communicated to me, oh yeah, you should be a teacher. You should be a teacher. And so I just naturally fell into that. Didn't really know what else was out there, which is one of my other pain points, but I'm sure we'll get to that. So I did always, and I do have the desire to teach. It was all about finding the right, or what it was I was passionate about teaching.
Yeah.
So.
And the course you teach, say it again what it was exactly. It was...
Yeah, it's called life design. So
and I've obviously been through school and we never have anything like that. Can you explain for people listening maybe what life design is?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the school I'm at is really trying to do things differently, because I think, and this was a pain point that I was recognizing about 12 months ago, was that there is a lot that is being taught to our kids in the traditional school system that isn't preparing them for life after school. So when I had come across this school in Marsden Park who were doing a program called Life Design, which is a subject that's factored into the students' timetable from Year 7 to Year 10, like English, like Maths, like your general subjects. And essentially the focus of Life Design is the student. So they look at understanding first and foremost their unique design, so their strengths, their interests, their motivations, and then they start to look at cultivating that to their purpose, and then trying to ideate different ways that they can align what they do post school with that purpose.
Wow, that is exactly what I needed when I went through school. And you were just saying how there was a lot of subjects that kind of, not subjects, but there's a lot of time wasted, I feel, in school where it didn't help me understand any of what you just said, right? It didn't understand who I was, what I was about. All I was doing was regurgitating information that I didn't resonate with. And it really frustrated me going through school. And I feel that for me personally, I'm sure other people out there experience this, but it kind of made me feel a little bit more lost and confused. And I felt like I was falling behind. I felt like I didn't know where I was. To have a subject like that would have been amazing. That would have helped me get a massive jump start on a lot of things that I had to do as a fully grown adult. And I guess, are you seeing that with your kids? And
absolutely. I think our student, first and foremost, everyone that I speak to about life design or I mention, without a doubt, will say, I wish I had that at school. Why don't all schools have that? So I know that what we're doing is really paving the way and is really necessary. To some degree, our students are really thriving in it, but they also don't know any different because they've always that's just what high school is. It's got life design. The kids that particularly thrive in it are the ones who have come from other schools, who have experienced your more traditional mainstream high school, secondary school, and then they're like, oh wow, like I can actually do a subject and I get to learn about me and I can actually work on projects that interest me. And they run with it. So, it's awesome. And I've only come into the program, obviously, end of last year when I joined the school. But, I'm already seeing such amazing progress in it. And we've got some external life coaches that come in and work with us as well. And I just bounce off them because it's all about that conversations with depth and...
Oh, that's such an amazing thing to have in a school, especially with kids these days. I feel like, with social media and all the things that are getting into their brains that never went into mine as a student is going to need some direction. It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, but it just needs a place. It needs a way of being placed around that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the very least, it is giving the students an opportunity to prototype with different things or different career pathways that interest them. Because I know for me, I always had in my head, oh yeah, I'm going to be a teacher. And so I always got really attached to the idea of being a teacher. And for me, it was originally I was more primary school focused, but it wasn't until I was in high school and someone was like, oh, your high school teachers, not to discredit primary teachers, but your high school teachers, you really remember them. They're the ones that have an impact on your life. And I was like, yep, I'm sold. That's what's on my heart. And then I'm like, oh crap, like what subjects am I going to teach? Like nothing really interests me in terms of the subjects. Whereas other teachers will fall into like they love English or they love science, so they'll go in that avenue. And I remember at the end of year 12, I was like, oh, I've got to pick 2 subjects to teach so I can, go to uni and be a teacher. And so I always was attached to like, yep, I'm just going to be a teacher. I didn't really look elsewhere. And then I went and pursued like English and PE teaching without really having the chance to prototype whether I'd actually like them. When I was doing my pracs then at uni, I was in for a rude shock because I was like, I actually don't think I like this.
Yeah, wow. And
whereas if I'd had the opportunity to prototype that a little bit more at school, which is what we're giving these kids a chance to do now, that would have maybe negated my, not to say that, you find your way anyway, but it would have saved a lot of time, which maybe you mentioned.
Would have made that learning curve a little less steep.
Exactly.
Now, I've always loved getting into the person behind the purpose and the projects. Now, you've got a lot going on. Now, we've just touched on teaching, which is fantastic, and I love talking to teachers because they're just always full of stories, information, and knowledge. You've got a personal brand and you've got a little group that you started called the 530 group, which is all around, said Sydney as well as
Australia. They've got a few clubs in Victoria and Queensland too.
Now, a lot going on for someone so young. You're only 25. That's correct. I got a good memory. Now, I wanted to get behind the person. Now, what type of upbringing did you have to have so much going on to know, to a degree what you wanted to kind of do young and to have, these entrepreneurial traits of having your own personal brand business and starting little clubs that, take your time away. What type of upbringing were you surrounded by as a child? Where did you start? So did you grow up in Penrith? Did you grow up in these areas? Or
Yeah, Rooty Hill actually, so Western Sydney. My background is Maltese, so all my grandparents were born in Malta. My parents were born in Sydney. However, if I'm not too sure if listeners know too much about Maltese culture, but they like to play it safe. I mean, as human beings, we all need that level of safety, but Maltese people really like to play it
Security,
safe.
financially and spiritually and emotionally.
Exactly.
Stability.
You do the safe jobs. You do the ones that are guaranteeing, a stable income. It's not about your passions. It's not necessarily about your purpose. Like, yes, my parents were good. They're like, we want you to at least like what you're doing, but we also don't want you to branch too far off the safe and established path as well. So that's, again, why they loved the idea of me being a teacher, because what's more safe than a teacher? You're always going to need teachers. I remember my dad saying
Doctor,
that.
lawyer, teacher.
Yeah, exactly. But when you say entrepreneurial, and the more I develop my own self-awareness, the more I realized I was always entrepreneurial. As a kid, I was always the one that me and my neighbor, we'd always have little garage sales, or I'd have little businesses like massage or beauty that I would do. Like, this is from a young age. I was an expert with eBay and reselling things. So I always had that entrepreneurial spark in me. So it doesn't kind of surprise me that I've fallen where I have now.
Now, do you have brothers and sisters, or is it just you and the family?
I have a younger brother, so he just turned 21, so he's about 4 years.
Are you guys close?
Yes and no. We go through phases.
Because I always find that within 3 or 4 years, sometimes you can be super, super close with people that are very similar to your age, or sometimes it's almost like, well, we're there for it, we love each other, but we're not super tight in that respect,
Yeah, I think I've only just recently moved out of home, so I think that's helped my relationship with him and my parents, as it naturally does as well, because we're not in each other's pockets.
Clashing in the environment.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, we are close. I'm pretty sure he's just around the corner at the moment working at Vaynerchuk, so that's where he works.
Very, very close.
Yeah, literally.
Now, so having that background and that passion, and your parents going, play it safe. What were some of your, I guess, challenges as a child branching out of that? Because I could imagine that there would have been this expectation on you, and probably might still be. And what were some of the early on challenges that you would have faced as a person, right? So you're growing up through this, there's some challenges. Okay, you've got to let go of that. You've got to find a way around those challenges. What were they, and sort of how did you get around some of them?
Yeah, I think probably one of the main challenges, because like I said, I went from school to uni, so I was ticking all the boxes. I was ticking society's established path or blueprint for my life. Except it wasn't until I was having a few clashes with like students and stuff. Actually, it was probably a pinnacle moment around just before COVID, actually, maybe even just a little bit after. When we all went back to school, I was having one student who was just downright rude to me, like so rude, and despite me really being conscious of how I spoke to him and trying to support him, he still shut it down. And I just remember thinking, like, I just am not going to put up with this. Like, I'm not willing to come to work and have that Sunday afternoon dread because I don't want to go to work. And I'd speak to my parents about that, and they would almost not shut it down to dismiss what I'm saying, but because they've got the belief, well, work is just that's just how work is. Work isn't meant to be something that, you're meant to have your challenges and you're meant to have your struggles. It's not meant to be something you enjoy. And I just could not sit with that. And I'm so glad I kept that fire in me, because having that fire made me push through. It's like I had this deeper knowing that no, work is meant to be more than just earning an income. It's not, you don't go and suffer for 5 out of 7 days of your week to then fund 2 other days. I just was not going to have that. And so, yeah, I'm glad, because that then, even though that my parents probably thought, Casey's she's in her own dream world at the moment thinking that, but I'm so glad I stuck to it, because now I've been able to see that work is so much more than just earning an income.
Now, what helped you see that? Was there people, was there influences, was there things around you externally that made you see the light, so to speak, and hold on to it? Because believing in yourself at a young age is challenging.
I did dive quite, thankfully, I think, because of COVID. Had COVID not happened, I would have probably just been going on holidays and doing all that, because there was a point, last year and the years prior to that, I actually, and now I see it even more clearly, I actually did not know how to function without having a holiday booked. So like I'd have a holiday booked for every school holidays, and I would, I'd work my butt off during that 10 weeks, and then that would be my reward. And I'd burn myself out. I'd hustle hard in that 10 weeks, I'd tutor and do other things on the side too, to be then rewarded with the holiday. And I remember thinking, I actually just don't know how I am going to function without having a holiday booked. And then obviously COVID happened last year, couldn't go on holidays. And I then started to, rather than obviously investing my money in travel, I invested it in working with some coaches. So I worked with 2 life coaches, and they really opened up my perspective to, wow, these people are loving what they do and they're earning abundantly. And it really started to give my brain some evidence that, hold on a minute, there's something here. And that's what kind of opened me up to the potential of the online space as well.
And so where did that journey begin for you? So you obviously you invested in them, but where did they get you to start?
To be honest, it was probably more from a relationship context that I first tapped into them. And then, when I guess I thought my issue was external in, not having a relationship, not being able to attract the right type of male that I wanted to move forward with. But then the more you sort of look external, you realize that that's just a reflection of what's happening internally. And then that's when I started to see that there was probably a lot of like self-worth stuff, and there still is, like that's always going to be ongoing. But yeah, that was kind of the pinnacle. I kind of enlisted them for that reason. But then by delving a bit more into the internal stuff and, the self-love and the self-worth and all of that, that's where I started to, figure out like, hold on, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it what's my purpose? And I actually really believe now that that's the foundation for self-confidence and self-worth, is unlocking what it is that lights you up, and then being able to run with that. So
if you don't mind me asking, and feel free to not answer any of some of the questions I asked, but with that lack of self-confidence, where do you think that may have started for you? And do you believe, like, I feel like unless you've experienced this stuff, it makes it challenging to help others. Do you think it's now helping you, having that journey? Do you think that's making you a better teacher as well? Like, because there are so many kids out there, there's so many people out there on this planet who struggle with that. Have you figured out kind of where that stemmed from? Because you're saying that you had a lack of self-worth, so therefore you weren't able to attract the people into your life that you felt worthy of, or not, or you didn't feel worthy enough to have that type of happiness and love and stuff in your life, right? So where do you believe that sort of started from?
I think with doing a lot of the personal development work in the past 12 months, the more your 0 to 7 is your imprint period. So I'm sure a lot of my beliefs and even though I had an excellent upbringing, parents that I believe love me through and through, I guess it's the reality of it still is I'm going to develop beliefs as a kid, or I'm going to interpret things as a kid that aren't going to serve me in my adult life. So I think there were obviously things that probably I did interpret wrong, and then I've, by going through, primary, high school, you look for things to confirm that. And
friendships in school.
Look, I've always been very social, always been a social butterfly. I love to connect with different people, and like community is one of my biggest values. But I think it was more. To be honest, I think it was probably more high school, and that was where I found like I was quite confident going into high school, and then I felt like I was like small fish, big pond, and then that threw me a little bit. And yeah, I think I was always placing so much emphasis on the external, being someone who loves community and loves connection. I was placing a lot of my worth on the external side of things versus building that up internally, and then allowing the external to, I guess, add to that.
What do you do now? Because, I'm 100%, I relate to everything you're saying. So if there's something in me, I start to pinpoint, I start to notice that, say, with myself, I have like a lot of anxiety, things that happen, and I've always kind of had a battle with that. But when I notice that start to arise, what are you implementing now to help you deal with those sorts of things, that self-worth and all those sorts of things that you were going through? What steps are you taking to help challenge that and to help better it?
Because I think it's going to be ongoing, and more often than not, like the personal development work starts with the self-awareness. So when you notice that you are triggered by something, or I notice that I am triggered, I always approach it from a lens of curiosity now. So not from a place of like judgment, but it's like, okay, that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, or I'm feeling really frustrated right now. So it's just being attentive to how I do respond to things. And then like journaling is massive. And I work with another coach now called Blake Worrell Thompson, and he's an absolute legend. And he's got a heap of good practices when it comes to unpacking your thoughts and your stories that you tell yourself. I think now more than ever, I'm so attentive just to the stories I tell myself. And just because I tell myself those stories, or I've been telling them those stories for X amount of years, doesn't make them true. Yeah. So it's really just, not, there was a quote I read the other day, something about, you want to find answers to your questions, but you also want to question your answers.
Yeah, wow.
Which I think is really helpful. Only recently have I kind of come to in tying in with worth as well, that I have just always thought that my worth is tied to being chosen and being wanted. I've never actually questioned that. I've just assumed, okay, if I'm not wanted or I'm not chosen, it's because I'm not worthy. But I've only started to question that story a bit, and it's made me think, well, like, hey, that's a little bit self-absorbed to think that it's just about me and my worth, but it could very much, not being wanted or not being chosen could actually have nothing to do with my worth, and just everything to do with what's happening for that person, not being, in alignment with their preferences and all of that. 100%. So it's just really about what triggers come up and then challenging those stories.
And I love that, because it's something that I've always talked about as well, is the quality of your life can come down sometimes to the quality of the questions you ask about your life. So knowing that you have, the things that you have in your life, the things that you do, the things that you say, and the things, because a lot of this, I've noticed it more now in my 30s, more so than ever, that a lot of the things that I think or say is really just a reflection of what my mother or father were thinking or saying. And I'm like, I have no fucking idea why I think or say that. And then I start to question that, and that improves the quality of my life. So the quality of the questions that I'm asking each day, each time that happens for me, is improving the quality of my life.
Yeah, it's like asking, is this my story, or is this my belief, or 100%. Is this someone else's belief?
And I say this with the goals all the time, especially because being a trainer and working in the health and fitness space, I always ask people, yes, I've asked you what your goal is. Your behavior doesn't come close to what I would, if you're saying your goal is weight loss and your behavior is so far from that, I don't necessarily believe this is your goal. This is the goal I feel that you think other people want of you. You think that other people want you to lose weight, to be worthy, to be wanted, to be whatever. But you haven't decided for yourself that this is your goal. This is a goal that you read in a magazine, or this is a goal that you heard your mother say, or your sister say, or your brother say, or your friend say. And now you've adopted those goals and things, and you haven't started to question it. There's no quality questions there to improve the quality of your goal or the quality of your life. So it's really good that you brought that up, because I totally believe that.
Yeah, and I think it's like, it's whose belief are you actually borrowing, or whose goal are you actually borrowing here? And
it's confronting to ask those questions.
It is, and I think I would even then take another seat. It could absolutely be that angle, and it could also be the idea of like, well, if you say you've got this goal, but you say you've got this goal to lose X amount of kilos, but then you end up finding yourself binge eating. I look at that and I'm like, is that self-sabotage? So it's like, well, your conscious brain might say that you want that goal, but your subconscious is like, nah, I'm going to sabotage this because it's not safe, or it's not, it's not going to lead to love, connection, all of that if you do get that. So it's so interesting to delve into like, okay, here's our conscious brain, but then our subconscious brain is like 90%, it's driving what we do. And a lot of that's going to be formed from that imprint period of 0 to 7 when we're around our parents.
So influential in ourselves. Now, I love that. Now, also, what I want to talk to you about is your routines. What do you have as a routine? Have you got any routines that you want to share with the people?
Yeah, look, I think consistency is massive. And sometimes, and this is just my own self-awareness, sometimes I tend to take on more than I can handle, which is probably no surprise. So sometimes I do find it a little bit hard to stick to my routine because I try and jam so much into my day and my week. But I notice the difference from when I, start my morning consciously and well versus starting in a rush. So the value of routines is absolutely there. And I think that's one of the big reasons I love the concept of the 5:30 a.m. club, because you do have that consistent routine in the morning. You're starting your day consciously and you're starting it on the right foot. So then I feel like that sets a tone for the rest of the day. But I guess when it comes to my other practices as well, like I will always, when I get to Starbucks at 5:30, I always start with like my 10 gratitudes. So 10 things I'm thankful for. So that would be part of my...
Do these change every day for you?
The 10, yeah. So I just think of 10 things that I'm grateful for, and I think about why I'm grateful as well, because that just, I guess, increases the vibration of gratitude as well. So that always, and I notice a difference if I don't start with the gratitudes, or I skip the gratitudes. My days, my morning has a whole different feel to it. So always start with the gratitudes, and then I've got I use that power hour to do more of my personal branding online business, and then I guess, in terms of other routines, I've got my non-negotiables for the week. So, I might, I'll be making sure I get here at least 2 to 3 times per week. I'll make sure I run once or twice a week. So if I like structure, and I work well with structure, but then other people don't like, such a rigid structure. So the way I would approach it with them is I'd be like, okay, well then what are your non-negotiables in the week? And you can map them out that way. But I do think having that morning routine, at least something to consciously start your day, makes a big difference.
And if you were to share with us today your gratitudes for today, what would they be?
Oh, I actually think I put this on there this morning. I do have my iPad here where I type them. So I did have, the opportunity. I did have I was grateful to be able to network, because that then opens up opportunities. So it might be something like that. I always have a couple of people in my gratitudes, my 10 gratitudes in the morning that I'm grateful for. I'm always thankful to money for something as well, because, I don't believe money is evil. I don't believe, I think it's our co-creator. And one of my classic lines is that I'm going to put in my TED talk one day, is that unless you are working in a job that you absolutely love and that job is paying you enough to fund your dream life, you should have a side hustle. Because I think and I think it ties into worth as well. So many people are like, oh, I'm only worthy of X amount of money. Or they have their stories around money as well that have probably come from their upbringing.
I feel like exactly right. What do you think we are made of money? There's the quotes you hear at home. What do you think money grows on trees? We can't afford that. And then that becomes your ingrained sort of belief on money, and then so therefore you don't attract it. But no amount of poverty in the world will attract anything that's positive either.
No.
You could be as poor as you want. It doesn't mean you're going to change the world. You're not a better person for it.
No, exactly. Money just magnetizes. It just sort of emphasizes what's already there. And, money in the right hands will change the world. And the more money you have, the more impact you can have. So, and the more you can experience in this life as well, which I guess if we're tying into challenges and pain points, as much as I do love teaching the role that I do now, because life design was the subject that I was always meant to teach. There's a very real pain point for teachers, is that you got a capped income. Yep. And, yes, you can pursue other roles and all of that, but if you're just doing that to increase your money, then that's not necessarily the right reason for doing those roles. But yeah, so I think I'm always thankful for money for something, because I think the more we're grateful for it, the more we attract in. And yeah.
Now they're your gratitude list. And so where, in that power hour that you do in the morning at the 5:30 group, where does your attention lies? Maybe in personal branding. So, people get up early, they meditate. I think having some direction or some sort of understanding of where you want to go can help you. But what are you trying to achieve in that hour? Because I think that's the beauty of that. If you were to put a title on that hour, what would it be for you? Where are you going with it? What are you taking out of it?
Yeah, I think this is going to be very personal to me and what my goals are, but I always go in there so similar with my morning routine, or sorry, my weekly routine, I'll have my non-negotiables that I want to get done throughout the week. When it comes to my online business and the personal branding business, I've got all of that. I've got kind of my non-negotiable daily tasks, because I think and this is something that I've learnt within businesses as well, is that you can it's all well and good to have these outcomes that you are setting for yourself, whether it's I want to have 10 people in my team, or I want to earn X amount of money. And that's great to have an outcome goal, but it's all about what are your daily things that are actually is in your control that will align with that end goal. So for me, it's almost like I've got a bit of a checklist in the morning that I want to get through, that's aligned with those bigger goals that I have for the business and where I want to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how long have you been doing the 530 group for?
Only about a month, I would say. So I only probably launched it on my page and created the Instagram for it about 2 weeks ago. But I was doing it about 2 weeks prior to that as well. So.
And what type of response are you getting from people? They're tuning in and messaging you? And because I think it was the first thing I saw, and I didn't even know you were behind it. And I was like, this is an amazing idea.
So yeah, I had a few people coming before I officially launched it, and then I think the nature of it is that it is quite a big commitment to do it every day. But in the same regard, there is no expectation to come every day as well. So people have reached out, and I think it's just because it's something that's very new to this area, it's almost like just sowing the seed. So I think the more, and like we spoke about earlier, that tipping point, I have no doubt that if I can, get the 3 to 4 people coming consistently, that's when the momentum will build. So,
the tipping point is such a real phenomenon. Like it is, and I've experienced it many times as a personal trainer, developing that clientele base. I remember starting and having no clients and just walking around the gym floor, really hoping and wishing and putting out my energy and trying to get people there. And then I got 2 and I was like, okay, 2's good, but I'm going to have 2 for 3 or 4 weeks and it doesn't pay the bills. And then all of a sudden I had 6 and then there was a tip, 12, boom, straight to 22.
Yeah.
Within, every single time I chatted to someone, I was getting another client. And then that happens all the way to 40, 50 clients. I think this happens with everything in business. That tipping point is so valuable, and I think what we were talking about as well before the podcast was the tipping point is great, but people don't understand that it's there, and so therefore they give up just before success, right? There's a photo it's like an animation, and it's a picture of 2 people digging a hole across a mine, and one person turning around and walking away, and just on the other side of where they were digging is this massive pot of gold and jewels and crystals, and the other person still digging away only centimeters away because they never gave up. They're about to experience that tipping point, that jewels, that gift, that reward.
I love that. It's a good visual. Cool. Yeah, it's a great visual to keep in mind. I do believe maybe sometimes the universe will test you and makes, you say you want this, you say you want to create this, I'm going to see how much you do really want. Not to punish you, but to be I want, and I think so much, resilience comes from that as well. So yeah, love that. And that's the thing is I think that, and you need to be able to lead the way. And one of the core values of the 530 Club movement is consistency. So consistency within whatever you're doing to move the needle forward in your own business, personal development, all of that. But I think, I need to model that consistency to the Penrith community as well in me doing it. Even if it's just me to begin with, or it's just me consistently, it's trusting that this is a great concept with great intentions behind it, that I just have the philosophy that if there is the vision and there is the purpose and the passion behind something, you can't not be successful.
100%. I mean, it's kind of like the whole Gary Vaynerchuk. Have you heard of Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah.
He says, I said 4 times just then, but one of his messages is that if you are doing what you love and you're doing what is enjoyable and something that's part of your purpose, what does all the other stuff really matter? Because part of that is successful, right? I'm successful in that respect, regardless whether it was money driven or not. But now I'm loving it. And yes, I might be taking a $30,000 pay cut, right? Compared to what I was doing. But now I'm living in a completely different mental state. And that mental state is it's invaluable, right? You can't put a price on that.
Absolutely. And I really believe when you've got that space, then you're likely going to attract more into your life anyway. And I think it's almost like we get comfortable with the means that we're working. I think no one likes to be stressed, or no one likes to be operating from that type of place. However, we get used to it. So we're like, oh, you know what? This becomes just our normal to operate from this. But we don't actually realize that by taking a step back, or by doing things a little bit differently, creating some space in our lives, what we can end up then attracting because of that space.
100%. Now, do you have any book recommendations to people? Because there's a lot of stuff out there I see all over the internet. There's a lot of, obviously, YouTube videos. But is there anything there that you would recommend, like from a book standpoint, anything that you've read that sort of reinforces a lot of these beliefs, things like the 530 stuff or your personal brand?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I am very big on podcasts. However, one book that I do love, it's probably a little bit woo-woo, but like it's called Discover Your Dharma, but Dharma just means purpose. And I just love the language that the author uses to really modernize the concept of your dharma or your purpose. So, and this was actually really groundbreaking for me. So she has looked at, the main roles in society. She's got 9 of them, and then she's got a bit of a purpose quiz. So that tells you what that's like archetypes. So you might have like the artist, you might have the researcher, you might have the visionary. And so you do her quiz as part of the book, and it gives you like your top 2, top 3. Oh, wow. And that was just mind-blowing. She's actually got an online quiz as well. And it was mind-blowing for me because number 1 was teacher for me. Number 2 was entrepreneur. And so that helped me really understand a lot of what is my natural inclination. Oh, wow. And so I have no doubt that I was meant to be a teacher. I just was never meant to be a teacher teaching traditional subjects. And I feel like I've got that entrepreneurial wing in me. And rather than me being someone that will create a product, so to say, to meet a need in society, I will teach someone something, how to design a life they love. And that will be like my entrepreneurial solution. So, because really an entrepreneur is just picking what problems you want to solve in the world and creating solutions to them. So I loved that book because it was I love anything with archetypes, but that was a really modern way to understand it. And she goes into so much about purpose and all of that in there as well, and how quite often our purpose comes from our pain points or, seeing someone's pain points in the world. And I wholeheartedly believe that when you can unpack what lights you up and your purpose, that's where your confidence booms, or that's where you create that solid foundation for your confidence.
100% agree with that. Now, tell me more about your personal branding business.
So with my personal branding business, I think to take a few steps back, I saw, like I said before, with speaking about life design, everyone wishes they had that at school. Oh, everyone says, why didn't I get that at school? Why don't all schools do that? So I have been able to see a problem of people working out of alignment with their passion and purpose. So many people finished school, didn't know what they wanted to do, fell into a job that they either knew existed or their family knew of. That's why I think so many people go into teaching after school, because it's like there's no career development, so to say, within your traditional schools, and then you have to make a decision, year 10, year 12, what to do. Oh, we know teachers exist, like they have good holidays, I'll just go into teaching. So many people fall into things that way, whereas people don't make educated choices or aligned choices about their future. So I saw a problem there, and I also see a lot of people not even knowing what it is that lights them up, or not even knowing what their unique zone of genius is. So I saw that problem, and don't get me wrong, I'm in the process of developing like a life design program for those who have left school. That's on my agenda for this year. But I did think that, I could coach someone, I could help someone unpack what it is that lights them up, help them come up with their purpose paragraph. But if they don't have the means to do anything with that, then are they just going to fall back into the comfortable 9 to 5 and all of that? So it wasn't until I came across a vehicle that allowed people to start an online business with their personal brand, so what it is that lights them up at the forefront, and then leveraging partnerships in the background as like their financial backbone. So so I helped them with doing that, and I think I felt most inclined to that because it's bloody hard to start a business on your own, and 80% of businesses will fail in their first year. So rather than trying to wear all the hats, especially if you're working full-time already, leverage an existing business model with your personal brand at the forefront, allow that to create space in your life, and then you got more time to do what you love.
Sounds amazing. And do you have things that people can look out for that?
So I'm actually going to be, so if people come to my Facebook page, I'm going to put some information up about this today and tomorrow, but next Tuesday, I'm going to leverage my school holidays at the moment, and I'm actually going to run a 2-day workshop or 2-day mastermind. So I'm going to unpack something called our SIM, which is what we look at in life design at school, so helping people unpack their unique zone of genius. And then I'm going to unpack a little bit about the business model that I leverage for my personal branding business.
So it's just maybe spell your names because it's going to be hard for people to find you.
Do you want me to spell it now?
Yep.
Okay, so it's Kirstene. So surely you got the show notes, you can drop them in.
There was no way people were going to figure that out just by me introducing you at the start.
It's a hard name. See, that was one of my other pain points. No one can ever say Kirstene, so it's KC.
Just the KC on everything.
But the other way to connect with it is I do have a Facebook group called the Side Hustle Movement, and that's where I'm going to be running the mastermind through anyway. So either people can request to join that or follow my Instagram, and I can link them into that way.
Because the show notes, they're fantastic, but I always forget to put this valuable information in there. So it's good to have it in the actual podcast too, so people don't wait for me to do it.
Love that.
Now, I always love to ask this question, and I'm really interested to hear what you will say. But if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive or both, at the same dinner table, and you can pick more than one, but I like to keep it hard for you to answer, who would they be and why?
You know what? I would have been stumped by this question had you asked me last week, but after seeing him live on Saturday night, James Smith. He is just a legend. I think he's hilarious, but everything he spoke about on Saturday night in terms of, working in a way that you love and appreciating even the simple things in life as well, because he spoke a lot about the difference between pleasure and happiness. But yeah, I would just love to sit down, have a few beverages with him, and discuss how important it is not to. He actually framed it as the invisible blueprint that we're told to follow in society, even if that blueprint doesn't actually align with us. So yeah, I'd love to have dinner with him.
Now, what goes on at a James Smith? Is it James Smith? James Smith. What would you call it? Like just a show? Was it?
To be honest, I didn't even really know what he was going to talk about. He's someone with a personal brand that, like, obviously he's got his services that he does, his online PT and all of that through, but it's his personal brand that has really skyrocketed his business and his success. So I've followed him for a couple of years, and then he's got 2 books out. First one was more fitness oriented. Second one was a bit more like, I guess, life skills stuff. So it was kind of like a book tour, but like a talk.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so
because I know a few people that went to it, and I was like, I don't know what to like. I know who he is, and I've seen him speak, and I've listened to a lot of his points of view. But I was like, how long is the show for? Like an hour and a half?
It was probably about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. There's a half an hour break in between.
What are you like?
But he actually, so in the first little section, he went through a couple of different things, whether it was like loss aversion, limiting beliefs, all of that. So super interesting. But then he got everyone to write down something on their phone that they wanted to do, but have felt scared to do. And, a couple people were like, it was like quit their job or, break up with their partner. Yeah, whereas mine was actually, I kid you not, it was create my life design program. So, so I just love that. And that's been brewing on my mind for a while. I've been back and forth with it. So that was just like an affirmation for me. Like that was the first thing that came to mind for me when he posed that question. So it was like, yeah, got to do it.
And so what are the points of action you're taking now, like to get that started?
Yeah, well, I essentially think the workshop that I'll run next week, particularly that first part of it where we will be unpacking what a sim is. So just as a real brief teaser, we look at, the coaches that we've got that work with our school, they've introduced a concept called the sim, which is like if you got a mobile phone, everyone's got a unique sim in their phone. And so it's transferring that to we've all got a unique sim within us as well. So we've got our strengths, our interests, and our motivations, which is our values. So if we can imagine that like a Venn diagram with all those 3 elements connecting, that part in the middle, that sweet spot, is like our unique zone of genius, or our kind of like where if we had all those factors interlocking, that would be like our highest joy. I'll unpack that a little bit more and some strategies for unpacking each of those.
Super interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
Now, if, like I was saying, like you could have someone dead or alive, if you were to choose someone who is no longer alive, who would that be?
Good question. My first one just went to my grandfather, actually. I feel like he was a little bit entrepreneurial too. Always liked to. He was quite good with eBay, so maybe that's where I got it from. Someone that's dead. It's interesting. I'm really big now with like whatever the first thing that comes to mind. That's what like I'll just go with it. And the first one that came to mind just then was like Robin Williams. And I'm not even a really big fan of him and his movies, so to say. But I do remember reading something the other day about like, you know, he was very focused on. Actually, I think it was in that Discover Your Dharma book. Actually, he was always focused on making other people laugh and entertaining other people, but he wasn't, you know, taking care of his own needs first. So I think there's a lot of lesson in that we need to be filling our own cup and nourishing ourselves first and foremost, so we can serve from a place of love and joy versus from a place of lack. So yeah, that was really random, but that's just what came to my mind then.
I just watched the Robin Williams thing on 60 Minutes. I think it was on Sunday night. But yeah, very interesting type of character. I actually really enjoy Robin Williams movies. There's a lot of them, and you know his comedy, funny as. But it was so sad to see such a joyful, happy individual, you know, I guess take their own life. And I think his wife did, what was it, Louis' disease? Kind of come up with a reason sort of behind a lot of. I guess his loss of love for life. I think there was something that was happening in the backs of his mind, and there was something he was suffering from that he didn't even know about.
Yeah,
which is kind of sad. But yeah, I think that would be really cool to have dinner with him. I mean, you'd laugh. I mean, had him and James Smith at the same table. Far out.
Do love a laugh.
Imagine the voices that would come out. Like, it'd be the best.
Yeah, and I think that's really big. And I think if you're going back to values, because I think values or your motivations are so important, is that I have, and going back to the whole work thing as well, like I've just never been able to settle for the fact that like you have to work a 9 to 5 that you don't enjoy, or you have to work in a job that you don't enjoy. Like it's just, it blows my mind that people can, I get why people do it, because ultimately like you need the income that provides safety and security. But I think people are so used to not working in a job that they enjoy that's just what we have defined as normal now.
Status quo. Everyone just follows through.
And I'm not here for it. I really believe that I'm here to just to shake things up, to shake people out of their mediocrity. And yeah, show them that, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. Yep. So
now you need people like you to do that. And what would be your advice though for somebody, let's say, who is, let's say, mid-40s, has a couple of kids, is working a job that they they don't absolutely hate. They don't hate it, but they do not love it. They have their financial obligations. They have their emotional investment. They have other people to think about, wife, kids. You know, what would, if they wanted to sit down with you and sort of work on this stuff, what do you say to them, you know, from the start? Like when they say, look, you know, I really, really do want to follow my passions, and I really do, but, you know, my wife and my kids, I have this expectation. I have all these things going on. I have, you know, rent. I have all these or mortgage repayments or lease repayments on cars. How do you get them to start believing? Like, where would you start with them? Like, what would you?
My first thing that I would say to them is, I can't even fully appreciate what it's like to be in your shoes, because I only have myself to take care of. So I can totally acknowledge that someone who does have kids and does have many other commitments, that it is harder and there is more at risk, so to say. But, and quite a line that I've heard before is like, what is keeping you so loyal to a life that's keeping you so stuck? So if you do feel like you're stuck, or I would even say like, even if you don't hate your job, but you don't love it either, that's still a big part of your week not to be lit up by what you do.
Yeah.
So I still see that as a massive loss in that regard. And I think we as a culture, we're very lucky to live in Australia, because we're safe, you know, physically, emotionally, mentally, for the most part. However, we also are very comfortable. And they say that like the enemy of a great life is a good life. And we're all living good lives in Australia, but we're comfortable and we're less likely to step out of our comfort zone to be able to experience that good life, that great life, sorry. And I don't think for someone who's probably got a lot of obligations and a lot of people depending on them, it might be more of a matter of doing small scale tests outside your comfort zone to realize that it's actually okay, it's safe, it's okay, and then building up that capacity to do it.
And capacity. They always say there's two types of hard in life. The first hard is living in your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
The second hard is living outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
But you've got to choose your hard.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good. Being someone who does have the responsibility of others. Luckily enough, I love what I do, and I find ways of lighting myself up through the podcast and whatnot. But I still find myself thinking, okay, there were other things you wanted to do, Shane. Say tomorrow you woke up and you just no longer loved training people, no longer loved owning a gym, no longer loved doing. Like, I challenge myself with those questions quite frequently to see whether or not the answer is still yes, I would be doing this. And I always think, I always go, but I'm comfortable. What is the enemy? The good life. I'm living a good life, a comfortable life, And I always go, that question is so true. There are two types of hard, and I've just got to choose my hard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the beauty of the online space, and don't get me wrong, I know that there is some negatives of the online space because there's the comparisonitis, there's cyberbullying, there's all of that. But if you believe that the online space is negative, you're going to only find things to affirm that.
That's what you're going to see.
If you can see that there's opportunity in the online space, then you're going to notice the opportunity too. The beauty of social media, because it's not going anywhere, if we can learn to leverage it and use it as a tool to create an income, there is a way to pursue a passion project like online. Like, I think and for someone who is still working in the confines of a 9-to-5 job or whatnot, look online. Start an Instagram page that, is just about the things that light you up, and find a vehicle that can support you in monetizing that as well.
150% agree with what you just said. That was awesome. Now, is there anything that you wanted to leave? Now, two things though before we finish. Now, we're coming up to the full hour, so one thing, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And if you're even pushing forward mentally like that, if you are, where do you see yourself 3 to 5 years? And then after you've answered that question, one of the other things I love to find out is if you just had a message that needed to get out there and it was a message to the world, what would it be and why did you choose that message?
Good questions. They're good questions. I don't believe I will be confined to a school or another organisation within the next 3 to 5 years. So I'll definitely be out of schools. Again, loving, as I say, out of schools as a full-time employee, so to say, not to say that I'll never be back in schools working, because I think that we need to get to, in order to help people work in a way that they love, we need to be addressing that at a school level. So I will always feel like I'll be involved with schools, but I will definitely be running my own business, and that'll be supporting me to be able to do all the big passion projects I'd love to do. So definitely expanding the online business, because ultimately I want to show my goal at the moment for the next 18 months, because I was only just saying this to someone this morning, is that I want to be able to support 100 people with creating an online business with what lights them up at the forefront. And so 100 people, me helping individually, seems like a big goal for 18 months. But if I can help 10 people, then that creates a ripple effect of people working in a way that lights them up. And then I would love to, like I said, be having that life design program that people who have finished school are able to tap into as well. So that would be like my 18 months to 3 years goal. 5 years. Goodness, who knows? So I'd love to have more spaces where people can come and, obviously like nourish their bodies, get good food into them, but also mainly be working on a project that they love, or their side hustle and all of that. So taking this idea of the 5:30 Club and expanding it even more too.
Wow, love that idea. And what's your world message?
My world message is that, let me think about it real and say it nice and concisely, is that ultimately I believe that here it is actually. Here it is. That, do you know the quote that, you know, if you work in a job that you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life?
Yep.
Everyone knows that quote. I used to love that quote, but I actually can't stand it now because I think so. If you work in a job that you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. It still separates the concept of working and doing something you love, which I just think we have gotten the definition of work wrong. I believe work was always meant to be something we loved. It was always supposed to be something that was aligned with our passion and purpose, and we've got it wrong. Society's gotten it wrong. So it's all about coming back to the original definition of work and, pursuing what lights us up.
Beautiful. What a message. Love it. Now, is there anything that you wanted to add to today's podcast to get people out there, or anything that you want to add in regards to, you know, even some self-promotion stuff, whatever you want? Just hit me with it now.
Well, look, I do provide a lot of content through my Instagram channel, so I'm going to make sure you put this in the notes so they get it.
You can write
my
your
handle.
Blurb. You can write your blurb.
Love that. A lot of content I do feed through that, and I will have the 2-day mastermind, the free mastermind to tap into next Tuesday, but there will be replays available anyway. So I'll put all that through on my page as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Casey.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
having
it. It's been a massive amount of information there for the people listening, and so much for them to take home and digest. And hopefully, just, you know, a few people that are listening are going to go, you know what, that makes so much sense to me.
Spark a light.
Through your, through your experience and through your exposure, they can change their lives and start working and working on their passions and things that light them up.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome. And guys, I will do my best to get all this information in a bunch of show notes for you. So if you do want to check them out at the bottom, you can. Otherwise, just contact me directly. I'll put you into contact with Casey, or hit her up. And the spelling is all correct earlier on that. And we'll get it right in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us again, guys. And welcome back to the People Podcast. Now we're going to keep it going, keep running it, and not stop like we did last time due to, you know, me being a little off target. Thanks so much, Casey. Love it.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.